If you have influence over anyone, you're a leader. How you use that influence for good or for bad is what can set you apart.
We are here again in the Talbotron 3000. Phyllis Towles is our guest today, and so happy we're going to talk about leadership. You've got kind of a fun history of leadership as well. You mentioned you're working in the, what we might call the secular world, then you're executive pastor
Yes.
and church leadership. So tell us a little about your journey in leadership.
Absolutely. My journey with leadership, first, I'm excited to be here, so thank you for this opportunity. My journey with leadership started when I was a kid. My mother, my family owned a business. I'm from the Midwest. And as a young girl under the age of 12, I knew how to run a restaurant, including the business side of it, greeting customers, working with people and staff, and just continued there through education and experience. But I've worked in corporate. I worked at MCI WorldCom. I worked at Intel Corporation for almost 15 years. I was a requirements engineer and then went into people management. So I've had experience with leadership for almost all of my 6 decades plus living.
So what's some of the differences between leading in the church and leading in the business world?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that. I think it's important for me to be congruent, and as a leader, as a Christian leader, I am a principle-based, value-based leader. And so whether I am in what we consider, like you said earlier, a secular space or a Christian space, being a valued and principle-based leader is important. I do find that, as you mentioned earlier, I've also been the executive pastor for a church for 10 years and had many different spaces where I've worked in churches. I do find that it is much more opportunity to demonstrate your faith in a secular environment than it is in a religious-based church.
Oh, interesting. So more opportunities. I sometimes hear people say, who come from the business world to ministry, is, of course, you're at large churches, so it may be different. A lot of it's working with volunteers is just a whole level of complexity more than working with people that you pay and you have to decide their raise and everything else. So do you feel the distinction there?
I know that people say that. I think, again, that comes back down to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
When you help people, even in a Christian environment, in a church, when you help people to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. I believe it's one of your quotes that says, or something that says that, I've dedicated my worship to the Lord through the service of people. And when you're a volunteer, when you understand that what you're doing in the house of the Lord is not for the pastor and the leaders, but it's as unto the Lord, and you set a culture that says we have a standard, then I think even with volunteers, you accomplish the goal. I've managed people where they've been paid, 6 figures plus, and I'm not sure that I would agree that it is more challenging managing them because not everybody is motivated by money.
Right.
And when you make that kind of money and you have money already, money is not what motivates you.
Interesting.
I find that as a leader, when you build a relationship with people, and again, you help connect them to purpose and mission, it's a lot easier.
Relationship, people, connecting purpose and mission. Okay, so those are similarities across volunteer and paid supervision.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the complexity and the differences. The how of leadership is in many ways determined by the who, when, and where of culture and organization. I mean, again, we can't just read one leadership book and it applies to everyone everywhere.
Absolutely.
You actually have a conference coming up where you're going to address some of that as well. But I want to talk about that in a second. But tell me, how do you see the need for leaders to kind of take stock of where they are, where he or she are leading, and saying, here's what's different, here's the contextual leadership here?
Absolutely. And so if we're talking like in a church, in a religious space, I think, again, that contextualized leadership is understanding that people are volunteering. We do understand that. There are the challenges, of course, of schedules, because when you're paid and you're paid to be here Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 or whatever it is, then there's an expectation. But when you set the standard for people and help them to understand, again, that we're serving diverse people and that our purpose is really to disciple people, right? That we are vessels of the Lord, that people will come to Christ, and if they already know Christ, that we will disciple them to grow to another level. Some of the complexities I think, associated with that are people are at different levels. And so when you're leading people at different levels, you have to meet them where they are and help them grow to the next level.
It's good. I like that. So in all cases, you're helping them meet where they are and grow to the next level. So you're doing this conference. What's the name of the conference?
Level Up. It is the Level Up Conference. It's our third year.
Right. And what's the focus? Because I think that's going to lead to my next question. You were explained this earlier. What's the focus?
Yeah, we consider ourselves, Dr. Stetzer, a boutique conference. This is, again, our third year, and we target contextualized leadership in diverse settings. So for ministries, churches, businesses, entrepreneurs, community influencers who are either just starting or in the middle, not that have, 5,000 people, 3,000 people, we really target them to help them elevate to the next level. And our focus this year is on mission.
I love it. Okay. So, and part of you were talking about is the contextualized nature of leadership. Now, you have, again, a unique pedigree, having, worked at places like MCI and Intel, prevailing culture spaces in many ways.
Yes.
You were then an executive pastor at a Latino megachurch, and now you're in a predominantly African-American context.
Yes.
Do you lead differently? Or let me ask you this way instead. What are ways that are different and what are ways that are the same?
Yeah, I think, again, I am value-based, and so people from either Intel or MCI, who I still keep in touch with, some of them, or my former church where I was an executive pastor, it was a diverse, it wasn't just Latino, but it was a diverse, it was, the senior pastor was Puerto Rican, and here, predominantly African-American, I'm the same.
Okay, so you stay as a constant and values-based leadership in all those contexts.
Exactly. Okay. No one would see me from either of those different locations and say, oh, she's different. Oh, that's not who we know of her.
Right.
I'm a hugger, so I'm going to hug you wherever I am. Right. I am embracing and respectful of people's humanity. I think that it's important to recognize the imago Dei, the presence of God, the Spirit of God in everybody, and treat them with dignity and respect.
Right. Okay. So what differences? Is it all the same? Because, even coming in this morning, here we're doing this Lead the Way tour stop here, wonderful at Cathedral of Praise in Sacramento.
Yes.
Met at the door, people carrying my things, bring me to a special room. There's a high culture of honor and a much more of a power distance between, say, an African-American pastor and in the context I'm used to. So what are some of the things that are different and how do you navigate them?
Honor, I love that you said that because we definitely have a culture of honor. I think honor is important. And so one of the things that we do differently, again, is leadership sets the culture, Dr. Stetzer.
Yeah.
And so the Center of Praise, our lead pastor is Bishop Parnell M. Lovelace. He founded Center of Praise. He is a man who leads by example. He honors others, and so it is easy to honor him and to honor others. And so I have also been in spaces where more hierarchical in the sense that this person is in the lead position and everybody honors him or her.
Right.
And it isn't as much reciprocal.
Okay.
I think that's just a leadership style.
Okay.
And one of the challenges associated with that is if you're not careful, an organization then is based upon a personality. And when that personality isn't there, you have to wonder then what happens with the organization.
I think we would acknowledge that black church culture, and if you look at the historic black church, has that higher power distance, that higher culture of honor. Now, there are exceptions. There are predominantly Anglo churches that have a very high honor culture. But and Latino cultures missiologists would often say they might make decisions more communally than individually. How do you navigate? How have you navigated? And how do you help leaders navigate those cultural differences?
Yeah, again, great question. I think like in the African American church, we definitely refer to our pastors, our elders by that, right? A pastor, elder, deacon, brother, sister, we definitely have that, and that is the cultural honor and respect. Oftentimes in society outside of that environment, they may not get the honor, the respect that they deserve.
African American leaders outside of that cultural context, right? So it makes
absolutely
important distinction.
We make sure that that we honor these leaders here. We don't just, it's not casual, even if you have a close relationship. I've known Bishop Lovelace now for well over 30 years, even before I started working at Center of Praise, but always honor him.
Right. As do I. Even when he teaches at Talbot School of Theology, I call him Bishop Lovelace.
Yes. And so that is definitely a distinction. Now, certainly if someone doesn't, and we do have people that come in sometimes and they don't, but what happens is it's not because that someone is going to say something to them, but if you find that you're the only one and everyone else around the leaders are referring to them as pastor, bishop, brother, sister, deacon, elder, then you acclimate into the community.
Right? You shape that culture, and then people kind of align with that culture intentionally.
And definitely in more of the Latino community, as you said, it's very much community, very much family, right? And I love that as well because I think that is beautiful. And one of the things that I think is very important about that community that I've learned is to honor and respect elders.
Yeah.
Sometimes as people start to get older, in non-diverse, multi-ethnic situations, they don't honor the elderly.
That's
And
very
by
true.
that I mean totally people like in their 70s,
Yeah,
80s,
yeah, totally.
right?
Absolutely.
In non-African American or non-Latino churches, and non-Asian churches.
Yeah.
But we believe in honoring our elders and letting them know that we stand on their shoulders and that we still learn from them and we still need them and value them. And just like the Bible talks about, it's generational,
Yeah.
right? Younger generations learning from older generations. That's leadership. I think leadership is if you have influence over anyone, you're a leader. How you use that influence for good or for bad is what can set you apart.
How do you teach emerging leaders to use their influence for good? What are some ways?
Again, I go back to being value and principle based.
Yeah, but unpack that more for me, because how are you value and principle based? What are the values and principles?
Yeah, I am biblically based in my leadership. I definitely model Jesus of seeing people in their humanity, respecting everybody. That's first and foremost, and understanding that regardless as to what other people are doing, I am responsible and accountable to God for who I am and how I show up.
Love that.
And so I go back to biblical principles of, love God, of justice, of serving people, of having character and integrity. Those things are paramount foundation for leadership, no matter what environment I'm in. And that's how I teach emerging leaders, which I do. I teach leadership development and training, do that at my church, have done that at all of my former churches, did that at, in my secular spaces at Intel. I go to other churches now and teach that. And I think the book Good to Great is a perfect example of that, right? Jim Collins, had the opportunity to meet him. All of those principles we can trace back to the Bible. They may be different language, but they are biblically centered principles.
When I teach leadership, I like to talk about how in the Genesis account, they were to bring order to the chaos. And as a leader, part of what I do is in the midst of a chaotic organization, I want to bring order to that, flourishing to that. And so I could teach that. I actually used to do that for Lowe's Home Improvement, but I couldn't use biblical language. But I was basically saying, here's how you help people flourish. Here's how you do this or that. And I think people eventually, Christians got it, but there's a lot of biblical framing that's there. Okay, so I'm a new leader.
Yes.
So what would your advice be to me to begin to kind of step into my leadership role? As you say, how I show up. How would I show up as a leader?
Yeah, I think first, Dr. Stetzer, it's important to understand why you want to be a leader and who you want to be as a leader, right? Begin with the end in mind. So I tell you're a new leader, you're stepping up, you decide who you want to be and what words do you want people to describe you as a leader.
I like that.
And when you work from there, then you start to, as I think you said earlier, you can't just read one leadership book or anything of that nature. I am a lifelong learner and leadership is my jam. So I think it's important to practice leadership and not just be a theorist when it comes to leadership. So I tell people that are just starting you in your journey, yes, read books, let's study other people, but don't just go based upon theory. Practice it. And you're not always going to get it right, but be willing to admit that you've made a mistake, learn from it, grow, keep practicing leadership.
Thanks for bringing your leadership jam to the Talbotron 3000. Good conversation. I appreciate you.
Excited to be here. Thank you so much.